What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geeks & Company, and what is episode 2 of my Revan helmet build. Guys, in episode 1, you saw me struggle through making the first helmet, fighting layer separation issues, having to re-glue pieces together. Listen, the first helmet was a real mess to put together. I finally figured out that the problem was actually my filament. Again, I'm not going to talk about what brand filament or who I bought the filament from, just because I don't want to throw these guys under the bus. I've never actually had any issues with their filament before. I've also contacted them, and it looks like they might be able to help me out here. So, again, we'll see what the outcome of that is. Long story short, I essentially put this one together and realized that it was way too big for my head. And then I went and reprinted a second version. As you can see, it's quite a bit smaller. And this one actually fits me. That's right. Now, if you can see here, I've already started doing some of the initial sanding. I've done some filling of some big gaps and stuff like that. So basically just doing prep work on this helmet still. Gonna do a little bit more prep work, and then we're gonna move on to the garage where we're actually gonna spray this with some filler primer. And in this episode, you're gonna see me finish this helmet. So it should be a good time. Thanks for sticking with me. Let's follow along. Now, before I even get to filler primer, I had a couple of defects on this helmet. There was some stepping issues on the top here. This printed this way. So when it got to here, I was getting a lot of stepping. So I filled this in right away. Same thing with a couple of little sections on the front here where I had some weird things going on. So I started applying some filler right away. Before I even get to filler primer, adding a little bit of Bondo spot putty. Trying to minimize how much filler primer I'm actually going to use here. Again, you know, where I've got major issues, there's no point just filling, or there's no point just spraying and spraying and spraying filler primer when, you know, it's going to need quite a bit of filling. You might as well do that filling first and then go in with the filler primer to finish it off and make it nice and smooth. So I've said this before, and I'll say it again. What I'm using for spot putty is the Bondo glazing and spot putty. You can also get, there's a MotoMaster version of this that is sold at Canadian Tire. It looks identical. It works identical. It's just differently branded. I would even go about saying that the MotoMaster version is probably made by Bondo. Well, funny enough, the Bondo version seems to usually be cheaper than the MotoMaster. So if you're good at Canadian Tire, check them out. This is what I mostly use. I also use a number of other spot fillers and putties, mainly the Tamiya products. The problem I'm finding with the Tamiya spot putty is that it's very liquid. So it's great if you're doing some very fine work, but when you have bigger gaps to fill, like you sometimes get on 3D prints, it's not great. It also shrinks a lot, which means that you've got to put some on, sand it off, put more on, send it off, etc. So you're going to build it up in layers. Whereas this stuff is thicker and it doesn't shrink as much. So when it goes on nice, and you usually only need to put one coat on. Now, there are exceptions to every rule, folks. I mean, sometimes you will have to put more on to make sure that you're covering whatever you're trying to do. But as a general rule of thumb, the Bondo spot filler, glazing and spot putty is what it's called, is my go-to. Now obviously if your 3D print has defects, before you get to filler primer is your chance to clean up all your lines, to make sure that everything is the way you want it. And really what I did as far as sanding goes, I didn't spend hours and hours and hours sanding this. I sanded the major high spots down. I did have a couple of lines through all of my prints that were a little bit higher just because of my printer. It's banding a little bit. So I sanded those down, and then I filled some of the extreme low spots. Like I said, it looked here across the face like there was a weird issue where there was a part of it that missed one of the walls. I don't know what that was about. but a little bit of filler primer and you can't tell. It looks perfect. So yeah, so this is pretty much done. Next step is going to be to move to the garage and get this sprayed with some filler primer. Here we go. I just gave the helmet a nice thick coat of filler primer. And yes, I'm going heavy on the filler primer. I didn't want to bring my camera in here, so I didn't film me spraying this. I feel like this is hard to mess up. You're going to sand most of this off anyway, so even if you go too heavy and you've got droops and doesn't matter. Now, you got to keep in mind, though, the heavier you go, the thicker it'll be. And if you've got a lot of fine details, you're going to inevitably lose some of that detail. So you got to be careful with that. But otherwise, in something like this, it doesn't have a whole lot of intricate details. Blast away. All right, so I've got the helmet all sprayed down with filler primer. I've started sanding it here. You know, the thing about FDM printing is it's so much work. It's a lot of work to finish those parts and make them look like super good and super nice. If you've got the patience, I mean, you could make this look just as good as something that was resin printed or even hand carved. It's just a lot of work. I tend to lose patience sometimes and cutting corners and, you know, and then you're not happy with the work after the fact, right? So take your time, folks. If I can give you one piece of advice, take your time. The finished prop is always only going to look as good as the amount of work that you put into it. So, you know, we're going to do a bunch of sanding and respraying and sanding and respraying. So, yeah, we'll skip to the next phase pretty quick. Well, for you anyway. Man, the amount of work that I've put in this thing at this point is ridiculous. Just to give you a bit of a breakdown of what I've done so far, I started by sanding the whole thing with a 180 grit sandpaper. Get all the high spots down. Then the major trouble areas I filled with putty, like you can see here. Lots of areas that needed to be filled. Sanded all that down. Did a layer of filler primer. Sanded all that down. Went back in with more spot putty to fix more areas. Another layer of filler primer. And then a final layer of filler primer. And it's not perfect. There are still some trouble areas. But overall, we're looking pretty smooth. So I think that's going to be it for this stage. I might give it, you know, 1 or 2 coats of black sandable primer. I'm not even sure if I'm going to bother doing that. I think for my purposes, this is going to be more than good enough. My paint job will hide a lot of the defects, the imperfections. Not a problem. That'll be hidden in my weathering. So I think we're good to go. So next step is going to be base coat and base color, which are going to be gloss black and then silver. And then we're going to go in and do the finishing touches. All right, so that's right. We find ourselves again in my kitchen. As you can see here, my base black color is now on. A lot of people are going to tell me, JS, your black's not glossy. No, it's not glossy. If I was really going for like a chromey finish, then yes, I would have gone with a gloss black. But in this case, I'm not going to go with a chrome finish. I'm going to go with more of a silver finish. The finish itself is going to actually look a lot like my Predator helmet. So that's why this is just a base black for that. I am going to be spraying the silver down. Again, I don't know if I'm going to show you this to you just because it's in the garage. It's cold in there. It's very fumey in there. It's hard to actually film in there. But I just wanted to let you guys see that I did finish with all the sanding, all of the priming. The base black is down, and then the silver is going to go down. Once the silver is down, then we're going to mask off all the red pieces. Then the red pieces are going to be sprayed. And then finally we're going to get to all of the weathering to make this look old and banged up and so on. So yeah, so that's where we're at right now. All right, folks, I just realized I wasn't filming, but I just sprayed this. Not chrome, but, you know, close enough. There's a little bit of junk in there as well. Which is not the end of the day, because there's going to be still more painting and more weathering and all that stuff. So in the end, it won't really matter. But yeah, this is looking friggin' dope. That's right, producer Jen hard at work, working some magic with masking here. When trying to get a good paint job, masking is always such a tedious process. She seems to have a sixth sense about it. Hey, we are probably going to have to be doing this again next weekend with the other helmet. What we're going to do here is we want a chipped paint job effect. Now, for those of you who don't know what Revan looks like, well, there you go. All the stuff in silver here is going to be red, obviously. The rest of the helmet is going to get masked as well, but I wanted to get this part masked off first. And then what I'm going to do is using trusty old mustard. That's right. Just regular old yellow mustard. I'm going to lay that down in strategic spots so that when I spray my paint and my paint dries, I can just wash it off. And wherever there was mustard, the paint's going to chip. And that's how you're going to get that chipped Mando bucket effect. So I'm going to go through some of this. So if you guys are building any kind of Mando, I'm hoping there's people out there building a Paz Vizsla, because, man, that guy went too quick. But this is how you're going to do it. So check this out. All right. Come on. This mustard seems very liquid. Like you can see, I'm not trying to be precise at all, right? Just randomly going at it. You don't want it to look too correct. Yeah, so there you go. That's it. And that way when I spray this, wherever there's mustard, the paint won't stick. It'll be protected by the mustard. Can you see this guy? Mm-hmm. All right, guys, we're back in my kitchen again. The helmet, the red, as you can see, is painted on. This is where the magic happens. We're going to wash off some of the red, and you're going to start seeing some of the mustard and silver come through. So there you go. You're getting an idea of what's going on here. I'm going to keep working at this, and then I'll show you when I'm done. And there you go. That's how you get chip paint effect. I probably could have gone a little bit heavier on this, but I don't want to go too crazy. Actually, I'm seeing there's still spots here. Hang on, there's still spots actually. We're back in the basement, folks. The helmet's basically painted now, but what we need to do is weather it. It looks too new and shiny, obviously, especially with the paint chipping that I've done on here. This needs to look old and beat up and like it's gone to war. It literally has gone to war. It was picked up on the battlefield. So heavy weathering on this. What I'm going to do, especially for this first pass, I'm just literally watering down cheap black acrylic paint. And I'm going to cover the whole thing, and then I'm going to wipe some of it off, leave some of it on. You know, I'm going to try to keep it random so that it looks dirty and grimy. And I don't want you to worry too much about what it looks like right now, because we're also going to do a little bit of brown washes. So this is a black wash. We're going to do some brown washes after, and then we're going to do some dry brushing, and then we're going to do some stippling. So this is a multi-part process. So part one, let's get this covered in black. Let's wipe down the excess, and then we'll leave it dry, and then we'll go back with some brown. Oh, this always hurts. Here goes nothing. You want to make sure you get that black paint in all those crevices. Oh, hurts my soul. This is a process, though. You got to trust the process. It's going to look good in the end. The water is beating weird on this paint finish. I may need to go way thicker with my paint. Oh, maybe not. You can kind of see here, it's like separating on the surface. Very weird. I've never had this happen with a wash before. I'm wondering if it's this specific paint. If it's already maybe too liquid. But I mean, once I wipe it off, the finish is fantastic. This part of the process is probably the easiest bit to do here when you're painting. For me, it's the most fun because this is where you get to be you, right? You get to go as heavy or as light as you want. You can make it as clean or as dirty as you want. This is really all 100% up to you. Up to this point, we're just basically following steps, right? We're 3D printing a helmet. We're sending it down. We're spray painting it. At this point is you decide what you want it or how beat you want it to be. I mean, I guess that's true for your color choices and your, you know, so on and so forth. But for me, this is when the helmet actually comes alive, or whatever prop you're working on. It really comes alive. Now, although this is giving me a nice finish, I'm not getting the effect that I'm looking for, where typically in all the nooks and crannies, you know, you would leave some black behind. This is not really giving me that effect. It's so liquid that it's just coming off even from the inside of all the cracks and lines and all the details, which should now all be highlighted with the nice black, is not. So I'm not sure how I'm going to deal with that. I may have to change my tactic here a little bit. Actually, let's try that right now. Yeah, this doesn't want to stick. I had a similar issue when I refinished. A similar issue when I refinished our Predators, where the paint didn't want to stick on the finish, and I'm wondering if it's because I'm maybe sanding too far. Maybe it's too smooth. I don't know. That'd be weird, but I suppose. You want to make sure you don't have any kind of drips, though, because drips on here, I mean, they'll show, and they'll look like a drip. So you want to make sure you know, it's okay to leave it dirty and grimy. But yeah, you don't have any drips. Now, I don't think this is dirty enough for me. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to let this dry. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do another pass of, I don't know, maybe I'm just going to go right to brown and do a full pass of brown on here. Get some brown in those nooks and crannies and, yeah, see if we can dirty up a little bit more. And then we'll be good for some dry brushing and stippling. That's going to be fun. All right, we are now the next day, and now we're going to do a little bit of a silver dry brushing. What we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit of silver paint on our brush, and then we're going to wipe most of it off. And then we're going to go around the edges and highlighting all the edges and bringing the silver back. I mean, if you look at most of the edges, they're all black now. I mean, it's hard to tell, but when you get up close, you can see that the paint job is very black now. So I'm gonna hit all the edges with some nice silver dry brushing to bring some of that silver back. And then it will basically be very, very close to the end. All right, now I don't know if you can really see any difference on camera here, but when the light hits those silver spots, it makes all the difference in the world. It brings back the shine. It makes this look like metal again. So there you go. So from here on in, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of brown stippling to simulate a little bit of surface rust. This is going to be in very strategic spots. But otherwise, we're pretty much done. I often use makeup brushes. If you can get your hands on some half-decent makeup brushes for cheap, go for it. The bristles tend to be a little bit softer. They tend to be a little bit easier to work with. I like them a lot. Now with the brown here, I want to make sure that I'm not going too overboard, right? We just want a little bit of, I don't know what you call it, like goldish, brownish shading. Just to, again, you're not even really going to see the color, but when the light hits it, it's going to look different. It's going to give some texture to everything. Again, we don't want to go overboard here. It's very light. Just a little bit of dry brushing and stippling. And the nice thing about these makeup brushes is that they come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, which is fantastic. All right, so here we go. So here is our finished Revan helmet. You know, I might do a little bit of extra stippling and shading and all that stuff, but I think for the most part this is good. It's looking pretty old and beat up as is. I might make it look a little bit older and more beat up, but I think this is good. I really like this red, by the way. It's like this really deep red with almost like a maroon purpley tint to it, which is a little bit different than what you typically see, but I really, really, really like it. But yeah, so here is the finished Mando helmet. Now, of course, we have this Mando helmet that we now need to finish. As you probably saw in part 1, this one was a nightmare. It was split and broke in multiple spots. I had to basically plastic weld this piece back together. The whole bottom of the helmet I had to plastic weld back together. And then I had to reshape everything to make it all look, you know, half decent again, which is not perfect, but hey, it's very, very close. So this one's very near paint. It's going to get the exact same treatment as this one. But this one's being raffled off. That's right. We are raffling this off at our May the 4th event. If you were there, you got a chance to see this and buy tickets and potentially win this. Or maybe you did win this. If you did win this, leave a comment below. Let us know what you think. But this is one, we're not going to go through all the steps, or you're not going to see all the steps. I'm going to go through all the steps. You're not going to see them because you've already seen them all with this helmet. But yeah, now on to helmet number 2. But I think that's going to be it for today, everybody. My Revan's basically done. I've now also fixed all of my armor so that it fits this much, much larger JS. But yeah, Revan's back. Well, that'll be it for today, everybody. Make sure you stay geeky, and we'll see you next time.